Good morning, everyone. I'm Tushar Jani, and alongside with Lansu Kedia, would like to welcome Ankit Aggarwal on the behalf of IIM Lucknow community to the very first episode of our podcast series organized by Entrepreneurship Cell of IIM Lucknow. Ankit Aggarwal is graduated from IMT Ghaziabad and then he pursued a management program degree from Harvard Business School. He co-founded Dare to Compete in June 2016, a global platform for learning, interacting and hiring through gamification. Dare to Complete currently have a network of 2 plus million across 20,000 companies, colleges participating and engaging in 60,000 opportunities like case study competitions, job, internship, etc. Without further ado, we would like to know about you and your philosophy. Okay.
Thank you, first of all, Tushar and Ansu, for having me on this channel and having me as a guest on the first show itself. Really pleasure to be here. Tushar and Ansu, the philosophy is very simple that we are going forward with. We want to gamify all engagements that happen between our stakeholders. Now, at one end, which is the user side, our website, the platform is used by students and early working professionals. When we say early working professionals, this is 0 to 5 years of working experience. Now, they are on Dare to Compete to learn and upskill, showcase their talent, build their CV, and then obviously get rewarded and hired. Now we are connecting them with our, so to say, other side, which is our bread and butter, which is corporates and other educators, because they would want to connect with students and early professionals either for employer branding or for hiring or for making some learning engagements, wherein the objective is not to hire people, but just to inform them about the company, what it is all about, what are the latest M&As, and all of that, right? And we work across domains. So we don't want to stop on, let's say, B schools or engineering or arts and science, or rather India, right? So this quarter onwards, which started last week, we intend to go to US, APAC, Australia, and EU as our next expansion strategies or so. And yes, the philosophy that we are aiming at is very simple. We want to be the so-called operating system of all these engagements, and we want to gamify those engagements between all these stakeholders.
That's great, Ankit. So the first question that we have from our pocket is, how do you see the Indian landscape uh, currently? Like, what's there in for startups, for young entrepreneurs? So, any views on that?
So I think there wouldn't be a better time than today to actually jump into a startup, or rather create your own startup. I'm talking about from both the angles, right? You basically take an opportunity as an employee in a startup as well as start your own startup, right? There is no better time than today to do that. Only because now the focus has been changing on India from across the world, right? We have possibly one of the best uh, uh, growth that's happening across the world, not only across the world but in the emerging markets as well. We have the best FIIs flowing in into our markets. We have funds flowing in into the startup ecosystem just to ensure that this ecosystem thrives, right? And that's where you have been seeing many new unicorns or many new fundings, and pretty much all the stakeholders of this startup ecosystem are now supporting each other in some sense or the other, right? The founders who have been there are investing in other smaller startups. The venture capitalist is also investing in other startups, and there is also a mentoring that is happening within these entrepreneurial networks as such, right? So from the startup point of view, I think this is the best time to get in. Now, outside of the startup point of view, let's talk about the industries, right? Or which industries will be growing in the future. And everybody knows that whichever industry, in my view, can be technology enabled, right? That will thrive. So I don't want to name one, two, or three any specific industries as such. It is as generic as it can be, wherein any industry that can be automated and that can be thriving on technology as its not one of the strongest pillars, but the strongest pillar, I think that industry will scale up and will expand exponentially. Now, the definition of technology might be very, very different in terms of context of that particular company that is implementing it, right? Some might be B2B, some might be B2B2C, some might be B2C, right? They might be creating a social community, they might be creating a transactional community, or they might be just selling a product on an e-commerce or any other website or so. But the only common line, I think, is the technology implementation, and that's why there is a huge hue and cry about engineers. And the third point that I want to make in India, this is possibly the last year in itself has been so. In my view, there are phases, right? So, in my view, the engineering segment as a whole was talk of the town in 90s or early 20s, right? That hey, yes, you have passed out as an engineer, you will have plethora of opportunities, correct? Both in terms of the kind and the quality of the work in that job profile and the compensation, right? Then it dipped down and the MBA took the next ladder in terms of the average packages rising and all, right? So the good part is that the MBA is still rising, right? The people who have been doing MBAs is still rising because there are requirements of being generalist, strategic, as well as specialists, right? And that's where the management degree holds a key uh, forte in your armor when you're actually going out in the world, right? But the good part is that in last year, now the engineering degree, the value of an engineering degree, especially the coders and all, has been increasing tremendously, right? Only because the industry is thriving on technology. So I think from the education point of view as well, because overall the India is growing, all the degrees that were not well taken in the last decade or maybe last 2 decades are also showing their value now in terms of the thought or the knowledge that they provide. And I think that is the biggest thing because education as a whole is improving in India. Having worked with Teach for India for about a couple of years, where I was, I experienced the education inequity that exists in our society. It still exists. There's no doubt about it, right? But in the last 2 years, because of edtech companies or so, there have been improvements, and that basically is a direct correlation to the job that those guys will have both in terms of the compensation as well as the quality. And the impact of that will be our industry and startup ecosystem and all the other companies thriving.
So I guess an important point for the young entrepreneurs in the house that yes, you'll soon have to shake hands with with technology and automation, as and when you'll be entering the Indian startup landscape. Yeah. So Ankit, was the entrepreneurial adrenaline a rush there in you always? Like you always wanted to be, like you wanted to have something of your own, sort of thing, or was it that something there was a driver, some push that led you to create a platform like D2C?
So I have been trying to get into something of my own, not because I can't have a boss. Everybody has a boss, okay? Whether you're working in a company wherein you technically have a tangible boss, but if you're even working as an entrepreneur, a public listed companies have bosses like a boardroom, right? Or shareholders. So everybody has bosses, right? Uh, the only aspect that I wanted to do, and this goes back as late as 2008 when I first started working on an idea with two of my other friends, and that was something like a book my show because we were into movies. We wanted to launch a platform to enable the movie ticketing system. Unfortunately, we didn't go live only because the Book My Show went live at that point in time. Then I again did get admissions after Deloitte and Teach for India. And then finally, I basically took Dare to Compete to the next level when I started full time in Dare to Compete with a small team. So yes, I mean, if you see the history that I've been in the last decade or so, yes, I mean that bug was always there in me to start something of my own, but that wasn't because I don't like bosses or I don't want to be an employee versus an employer. It's just that I would want to create some impact on the society and the other stuff, because all the three things that I started off were looking at a problem and then launching the solution. But earlier, I was not thinking of business as such. I was only thinking of the problem and the solution, whether that's viable, feasible, or not. I didn't think through in the first two versions. In the second version, essentially, in the first version, we didn't think through, but probably we didn't have the motivation or the uh, courage to actually take it forward solo. So yes, that bug was always there in me.
It's great to learn that everyone has a boss, because we always relates entrepreneurship with no bosses, no timeline, no schedules. But it's a great learning for our community to know that everyone has a schedule, everyone has a boss. My question is, entrepreneurs have a lot of skills. They I would say use a lot of skills, technology in order to solve problems. But I believe the very first skill that we all should have is the problem identification. So what problem made you think about a platform like D2C?
So I think many a times the problem identification happens when you experience this firsthand. Majority of the times, right? Uh, so for me, I think when I was doing my MBA, I wanted to have participation in competitions, quizzes, or so. At that point in time, there was no platform which was enabling the flow of information from the organizers to the users. So that was the trigger, because the information that was reaching to me was reaching very, very late. In some cases, the registration deadline would have passed because there was a chain of commands, right? The organizers will send information to the college clubs and committees or to the directors. They will look at it, they will see whether it's feasible, then they will send it across to the email IDs, and then it will flow, right? And there are many middlemen that were involved, which I thought that it might be a good idea to create a platform which enables the easy flow of information across the community and across genres. And that's why during my MBA itself, I started Dare to Compete as a blog. And at that point in time, I was listing information about various engagements or various competitions that were happening, and that was limited to B schools at that point in time. Onto the blog only in 2016, and this is 2010 when I sort of created that blog of Data Compete. But only in late 2016 and early 2017, we created the dedicated team and transformed that blog to a platform that you see today.
Your problem identification helps a lot like us to save our deadlines. We don't miss out on deadlines as frequently as probably you would had been missing. So thanks a lot for this. uh, okay, next thing, did any sort of external factors, could be friends, relatives, maybe your other interests, hobbies, in any way try to influence your goal, let's say in the making of D2C, in the midway कि नहीं, like let's leave it यहाँ पे, it's not working well. There are thoughts in the whole journey where you get sometimes stuck and you decide whether to continue with this thing or not. So was there this milestone too? I'll see this as a milestone in your journey.
So there are many internal as well as external factors that influence the way you work and what milestones you'll be able to achieve and how you'll be able to move forward, right? When I say internal and external, internal would be you, right? Whether you're motivated enough to carry on your idea, whether you're courageous enough to be bold and go solo with your idea when all the others are against it. right? Whether you have the right set of knowledge and skills to carry out that business completely and know the tech, the marketing, the operations, everybody. Can you handle that? Right. So those are internal factors. Now, some of these internal factors are again divided. One is those skills, correct? Now, you can gain those skills by sort of courses, but definitely you won't be able to gain that motivation or encouragement or the courage as such, right, to carry on. That's your intrinsic, right? There will be times when you basically bow down, you're feeling bad about it. I think my only advice is to think through a way to get back up and move forward, right? It might be listening to a song, talking to, let's say, your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, parents, whatever it may be, right? But you will have to get up and move forward. If you don't have the skills, the only way to acquire a skill is to get it, right? So learn it, try it, and then sort of move on. So I think those are the interesting intrinsic factors. uh, at no point in time in an entrepreneur's journey, or for that matter in any employee's journey as well, these factors should not hold you back, because these factors are in direct your control, right? You are the owners of these factors, so definitely they should not um, sort of control you and should let you down in your journey, right? Simple. Now, there are external factors. Now, again, external factors, I include family as well, and some external factor, because you don't have 100% control over your family, right? You can't argue with your parents to an extent. You can't basically, you if you're married, you have to take care of your spouse and kids, no matter what, correct? So, yes, the first external factor is your family, close knit family. You definitely need their support to move on, no matter what, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur in a startup, you might be working 14 to 16 hours or maybe even 18 hours, right? So you need family support for those initial critical couple of years where you're putting in everything that you have to scale up your business, right? And what happens is the business scales up in three phases, in my view, right? Zero to one, where you're just starting off, you're looking out for your first client, first business, first user, whatever it may be, right? That is the time which is more critical, because you're tasting waters, and this time requires you 100%, right? Obviously, there are certain other skill sets, because here the product, the technology, every skill set is required. The second phase will be 1 to 10, right? Where you're actually, now you have tasted waters, you build the product, now you're going out and building it and getting first few users, customers, and sort of validating your hypothesis across all the use cases of your products and services, right? And that's 1 to 10, which is, let's say, if you've converted one client, how do you go from 1 to maybe 10 clients, 100 clients at that speed, correct? There also, you as the business owner needs to be 100% in, right? And these two phases are very, very critical, and will have to eat up most of your time, because you will be limited in terms of resources, because you may not be a good brand, right? You won't be able to scale up your team to hundreds and 200s of thousand people, correct? So you definitely need that family support. Now, the other extra and the third phase generally is 10 to 100, which is that exponential growth. Yes, you need everything, but by that time, you are confident that you can rationalize and put across your thoughts in a rational and a tangible manner to the family that, hey, boss, I'm earning, right? I can sustain the family and everything. So I think then that external factor takes lesser of your time, and that is not even then an external factor at that point in time, right? The other external factors can be anything, right, in terms of the industry that you're in. So let's say if you started a startup on travel in let's say January 2020, correct? And you, the first 3 months you build the product and everything, and boom, COVID lockdown happened, then you can't control it, because that's an external factor, correct? Either you keep carrying on with your conviction that, hey, someday the travel will open up, we will make businesses, or you shut down or take a pivot into the virtual domain, right? Now those are external factors influencing your startup, your way of business, your journey, right? Which are not in your control. right? But there as well, your internal factors will play a critical role to basically see whether you can carry on with those external conditions in mind. So yes, I think these three are the bigger pillars when it comes to your journey or shaping up your journey in your entrepreneurial venture, or for that matter in your company as well as an employee. It's everything same, because let's say if as an employee I join a travel startup, right? I'm not 100% sure whether after lockdown I will have my job or not, right? So then intrinsic factors will kick in, wherein you may have to upskill, you have to unlearn few things, and maybe switch jobs to maybe a sector which is more technology enabled, where you will find bread butter.
We all agree that everyone have their own journey when it comes to entrepreneurship, be it at the time of schooling, be it at the time of job. So in the journey we all have problems which made us an entrepreneur or maybe a better person. So what problems have you faced while working on a platform, building like a platform, D2C?
So there are numerous problems. Every day you get bombarded with different set of problems. Some are tactical, some are strategic in nature, some are long term, some are short term. So there are multiple problems, and that will happen. I mean, so my key saying to everybody is that uh, you always accept and expect that there will be problems in your journey, right? Pardon me for saying this, but shit happens, and you need to know how to get out of that troublesome scenario, right? Because how do you get out of that? How do you solve that problem is what defines you as a person, as a character, and that's how what defines you as a company moving forward as well. See, all the institutions that have been built, Reliance, Tata Sons, Aditya Birla Group, and other companies, which was so-called startups earlier, like Flipkart, Amazon, right? Everybody had their share of problems, correct? How they dealt with that problem, how they scaled up their operations, keeping in mind those problems, is how they have been able to define it. There are, I won't take names, but in every industry, there are multiple players that get in the e-commerce industry itself, right? You would have seen, if you see last from 2009 onwards, right? If you see, there have been many players, right? But at this point in time, only two come to your mind: Flipkart and Amazon. There is no other third player that even come close to in with the kind of mind share that Flipkart and Amazon has, right? And the e-commerce industry as a whole, the ruling, the let's say the policies from the government point of view, if I say so, right? If everything changed, it would have changed for all the players, right? But nobody was able to scale back. I mean, you can treat that on funding and the other aspects, but the essence is the team was able to navigate through that problem, maneuver through it, and come on top. So I think the problems will be there. For me, I on in Dare to Compete, the biggest problem early on was forming and recruiting the best team. Correct, because when you start, and the team basically plays a very important role in your 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100 journey. Right, 0 to 1 is a close knitted family with 4 to 5 employees, and pretty much everybody is doing everything. Right, because you have a small set of resources or so. 1 to 10, you still try and build up some specialist in your team that handles few things really well, right? Still, you would need generalists who can oversee multiple departments, right? In 10 to 100 journey, you need specialists, right? You need a marketing guy to manage the marketing, because you'll have to create a brand, right? You need a CTO, which is from day zero as well, but you need a separate CTO outside of your CEO, who can actually look at technology, right? You need an operations manager to look at customer service and all of that, right? So there will be different aspects of the kind of problems that you might be facing vis-a-vis the phase that you're in. Now, with Dare to Compete, the first problem that we faced was the team. Luckily, we were able to get very good people who have been with me since the start, both in technology, client engagements, operations, and who are with me right now as well, right? The second set of problems that come in the way is that when you move fast, few things do break in between, right? And they don't go as expected. Now, the first thing that you need to do is the deviation, right? From the expected lines to the actual outcome, right? What is that deviation? And getting into the root cause as to why that deviation happened, and then solving that. I think these are three steps that needs to happen when you're facing that problem. And we had a share of the problems. I mean, I still remember um, the first quiz on Dare to Compete. Not the first, I mean, one of the big quizzes. I won't take the name of the company, but we were expecting close to 7,000 people coming in playing the quiz. Uh, there were 10,000 registrations. We thought that 70% will come and play, right? In the last 3 to 4 hours, we got 15,000 registrations. And we thought that still, okay, maybe 9 or 10,000 may come and play it. But we were surprised that 95% of the registered guys came and played that quiz. The server crashed because we were not prepared. The client was not prepared, and then the deviation was because we were expecting lesser numbers, right? Why we were expecting lesser numbers? Because the client didn't communicate to us that hey, they are doing a final push and the numbers will double up. They didn't inform us, but they did it, right? And in a matter of 2 to 3 hours, the numbers doubled up, and we couldn't manage the technology backend to scale that up, right? So and likewise, there have been other things. There have been situations where I have felt really bad for our clients because we were not able to deliver on the business. And these are early days. I mean, all of this that I'm talking about is probably 2018 or so, right? Both the instances. But we learned from it. I mean, thereafter, there hasn't been any other incident, and sort of fortunately we didn't have it, and we don't intend to have it because we have learned. Now there is a team handling everything. The things are automated. We have extra capacity to manage all of that as well, right? But yes, I mean, there have been our share of problems.
Yeah, so this is why probably many ventures with excellent ideas sometimes fail because they don't have the right set of people, maybe to right set of people in terms of skills, maybe in terms of attitude to handle the pressured situations that may arise while the functioning of the whole thing. Yeah. So, like when we like as an entrepreneur, you might you have worked on a whole lot of things. There may be situations where you'll be stuck with a decision making or a thing. So, what was your probably the hardest decision that you had to take while your whole journey?
I would say there are two different kind of decisions that are hard on me. Okay, one is related to people, and the other is related to, let's say, new idea activations given the resources that I may have at that point in time. When I say resources, both time and money, right? And the kind of people who will be doing it, right? So I'll first talk about people, right? Why I feel, because see, when you are in a startup, you recruit people based on certain skill sets that you can foresee or you can evaluate during your interview process. That's not only for startup, that is for bigger companies as well, correct? uh, in a startup, the only thing that we don't have is time to train a person, right? We cannot be an Infi or a TCS who can have a 6 months training module to train the person and then put them on a job, right? So we would need a person. I'm not saying that that person should be really good from day one itself, right? We evaluate their skills. We also evaluate whether that person can learn on the job or not, right? But sometimes you do make mistakes, and I've made mistakes, and possibly every person would have made mistakes early on, right? Some people do not see the end of the tunnel, right? Because they are not able to upskill themselves, they're not able to do anything, and they become a liability on the system, right? Uh, Now, firing is very very easy, but at Dare to Compete, we have a saying that if we have hired a wrong person, first we need to validate this hypothesis that that person is wrong, and that hypothesis cannot come over a period of few days. It has to be few months. We need to give that person a good amount of time to showcase. There have been times where we were wrong. I mean, in terms of we thought that, hey, there are skill set matches, right? But over a period of 3 to 6 months, that person scaled up, and we are very, very happy that person scaled up, right? But there are times where you have to put a foot down and do a, I would say, an open talk with that person that, hey, you and I both know that this is not working out. Correct. And it pains me to do that only because, I mean, the first thing was that, I mean, I'm not saying that it's the person mistake, right? Possibly the mistake happened on both the angles, right? The person would know what kind of job profile it is and whether that person is capable or not, right? At our end, we basically judge the person very, very wrongly because in an interview, you can't really check everything, right? But firing is not an option, right? So we basically sit down and we figure out that can we put them on a progressive plan. We give them 2 to 3 months to move forward, learn new skills, and then we come to a mutual understanding that, hey, these are the benchmarks that you need to hit in 2 to 3 months. If you're not able to hit, then possibly it's best for us to end this journey both ways because we'll be hurting both, right? And that's how we need to work with people, and that has been the hardest decision because for me it's not easy to let go any person who has played a critical role in Dare to Compete's journey, or we have hired that person keeping XYZ things in mind, but that person was not even able to do ABC of those things, right? So that's the first hard decisions that in my view I take, because for any company people are the strongest, I won't say pillar because the strongest pillar is still technology, but again, people only make that technology. So I would say the underlying thread will be people, right? The second aspect, I think, from the perspective of this specifically is prioritizing the new idea activations, right? Given the resources that I may have at that point in time. It is difficult only because as a founder or as the founding team, you would want to do 100 things. But definitely you don't have resources. I mean, you may not have resources even to do 10 things, right? So how do we prioritize which 10 out of those 100 ideas should be implemented, right? So that again becomes harder. And then I mean, I have my own um, uh, index when I prioritize them, which is, and that is very, very clear. Any idea that either gives me more revenue or user stickiness. I only evaluate any idea into these two forms, right? Whether revenue is increasing or user stickiness is increasing. And if there are two ideas with revenue and user stickiness, I would take revenue higher than user stickiness, right? But any idea which is not contributing to these two is completely out, right? The next step is essentially to tell the team that they have this much amount of time to roll this out and this much amount of time to evaluate whether this has worked or not. There has to be specific timelines and boundaries that we need to give out to the teams as well, because everybody needs to work in boundaries. Because if an idea didn't work, let's pick up the 11th idea, right? And chuck off the fourth idea, which is not working. And that cycle needs to go on. It is very, very critical when in a team to have that culture of pulling things and pulling the right thing from a list of 100 things, trying it out, either scaling it up or shutting it down, and then pull up the 11th thing. I think these are the two hardest things as an entrepreneur that I faced. and I still face, and I would say I will keep on facing it because these are part and parcel of running a business.
Now talking about the hardest decision, we are in the midst of wave three of COVID. So, what is your sustainable plan considering the uncertainty due to COVID or any of the technological factors?
There are two things that I am doing, right? So one is that there were before COVID, there were a few engagements which were sort of services point, not the product per se. So we have totally shut down those services stuff at this point in time, right? We are only moving in the product way so that no matter what happens, people should be able to use those products from their home, which is, I mean, our website has been completely online, right? So we have already transformed many of our products, the gamification, the SaaS, everything has been included last year itself, and we are building on top of all these things. And we are launching a couple of industry first products in terms of multiplayer quizzing, multiplayer coding, and all of that. Right now, when we are sort of doing or launching these things, one thing is very critical. When you basically launch these, you need to basically be in the right frame of mind to think through how your users will be using it, right? And now what we have done is earlier we were still thinking of the on-ground version that hey, can the campus activations be done by the campus ambassadors? I mean, that is our outreach program. Now that has been put across such shop because nobody is on the campus, or for the working professionals as well, people are not going on to their own companies, right? So yes, everything went digital, right? The second aspect is personally, and I tell it to my team that they don't have to worry about the financials, right? So let's say even if Dare to Compete doesn't make or get a business for next 6 to 9 months, right? I should have money in my bank to sustain all my employees. And I've told them clearly that as a company, we want to do that. We want to have money in the bank, even if there is zero business. Because at no point in time, I would want to lay off, right? And that implementation we have already done. We were lucky enough to be doing it from day one itself, though not so earlier. Our target was 1 year. I gradually built up from 2 months to 3 months to 6 months, and now about 9 months. Right. Eventually, I would want to have at least money in the bank which can sustain, and that's my first target, that can sustain the overall employee base of Dare to Compete for a complete year without Dare to Compete making revenue for the whole year. And we are about 50 plus full-time employees, right? So our outgo is very large overall. So yes, we're doing these two things. One, keeping people and my employees in the front and the front side, and the second is about the business, how we are scaling it up and how we are ensuring that everything is online.
It's so happy to hear a visionary leader talking not just about its startup, but its employees, its company, its technology, and taking care of every employee when it comes to his own startup. So now the last question for the day is any three tips you would like to give to people who wanted to start their own entrepreneurship journey, or maybe who wanted to start their jobs maybe in a year or two?
The first thing that I basically say, and possibly this sums it up, uh, start today. So whether you want to run a 100-meter race, sprint, or let's say a marathon, correct? You need to start today as if there is no tomorrow, because you never know whether you'll be able to launch it tomorrow or not, right? Whether you'll be able to sustain tomorrow or not, right? But the best thing that you can do is whatever your objectives are, whether you want to have your own startup or you're running a consulting segment or you're running a marketing segment, you need to start today, right? So let's say you want to be a consultant. The first thing you need to do is try and get as many consulting interviews or how to crack cases. you need to start that prep from day one, correct? If you're in a marketing domain, if you want to crack, let's say, marketing in HUL or any other bigger FMCG company, you need to know as to what it takes to become a marketer, correct? And for that also, you need to start today. If you want to be an entrepreneur about an idea and you know that you want to launch your startup after your college ends, I would say that start building the roots or the building blocks from today itself. Start identifying people, reaching out to your consumers, talking to them. At least you can do that during your college life. I'm against dropouts in terms of at no point in time your study should take the back seat, whether it is your business, whether it is other things, because your knowledge and start. So when you study, you get knowledge. You when you get knowledge, you get, let's say, maturity to implement that knowledge in your business, right? Which makes you who you are going forward, right? So if things are not going well, you will be able to rebuild everything if you have that knowledge with you. But if you're not able to do anything, right, and you basically do a knee reaction wherein, hey, I have everything, let's chuck, I don't want to do this degree or so, I think that's a wrong way to go about it. So my only 2 cents will be, start, maybe small, but start today. Don't wait for tomorrow, because there may not be a tomorrow.
Harsh, but I think we are to the end of the session. We would have loved to have more conversation with you. So thanks a lot, Ankit. Thanks for sparing time for the community. Your journey, I think, would definitely inspire many future leaders in the pipeline and will be a direction for those already having some value to add in this field. It was really great to have a conversation with you, and we hope to have more such future opportunities. With this, we come to an end to our very first episode of the podcast series, and I'll request all the community members to stay tuned for the upcoming episodes.
So thank you so much, Tushar and Ansu, for having me here. It was wonderful to interact with both of you.
Our pleasure, sir.